Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Archives and Heritage for Palestine. And today we have with us Dr. Faiha Abdulhadi and Dr. Manal Hamzeh. I'm very honored to be welcoming you. Before we begin, I would like to open today's event with a land acknowledgement. As a Palestinian in the Shatat and as a child of refugees, I have a great responsibility and debt to the traditional caretakers of the lands in which I work and live. This includes Michigan, which is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, as well as the Seneca, Delaware, Shawnee, and the Wyandot nations. I also situate myself in Toronto, which is the traditional lands of the Wendat, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Métis, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. But today, I have the great honor of joining you all from Palestine. It's every Palestinian's hope and dream to return to their traditional lands, which remain under the control of Zionist apartheid, settler colonialism, systemic oppression, and the genocide of an ongoing Nakba. But even as I'm here in Palestine today, I know that return is a process that will never fully be complete until Palestine is free and liberated under the sovereignty of its own people. In recognizing my own history of displacement, the denial of the right to return, and subsequently being an uninvited guest on Indigenous lands in Michigan and Toronto, I acknowledge a shared struggle for decolonization, one that spans across oceans, lands, communities, and kinships. So as I said before, welcome to Archives and Heritage for Palestine. If this is your first time with us, this is an ongoing seminar series where we feature scholars, archivists, practitioners, memory workers, writers who work to safeguard Palestine's tangible and intangible culture. We engage experts in critical discussion and topics such as ethical repatriation, Arab epistemologies, and practices of heritage preservation, cultural genocide, and knowledge production in the effort to advance education and advocacy of a Palestine heritage and archives on an international scale at this time of mass destruction and repression. As we witness the starvation of Gaza under an ongoing Zionist ethnic cleansing campaign, the need for this collaborative space to build and share resistance knowledge remains critical. Originally, we envisioned that this series would be a year long, but here we are with our 10th installment. I'm honored to be a part of this work and to be building this space today with this incredible panel of Arab feminist scholars. I'll pass it to Jamila now, my co-host.
Thank you, Tam. My name is Dr. Jamila Ghaddar. I come to you today from Lebanon, where I am from. And I'd like to, as is our tradition in the series, before we start our program, to have a moment of silence 2 years into this horrific genocide and well over a century of ethnic cleansing, displacement, settler colonialism. I'd ask you to join me in a moment of silence for all the martyrs of Gaza, Palestine, the region, the global south, all the martyrs we remember now of the empire and its crimes. Thank you very much. I'd like to hand it back to my dear co-host, Tam. Please go ahead, Tam.
Thank you. And at this point, I would like to give thanks to our sponsors and partners who do so much to assist us in this work. This seminar series is a joint initiative of the Middle East Librarians Association, Publishers for Palestine, Archives and Digital Media Lab, and Fighting Erasure, Digitizing Gaza's Genocide, and the War on Lebanon project. We're also sponsored by the Lebanese Library Association, City University of New York's Archival Technologies Lab, Library Freedom, We Hear, Interference Archive, and Uproot. We couldn't do this without their amazing support. And then once again, I'll pass it back to my co-host.
This seminar, well, all of our seminars are very special. This one is also part of a much larger conversation and initiative we're thinking about as part of the Fighting Erasure project and the broader effort to address the gaps, to document the war crimes, the genocide, and to safeguard and preserve archives and heritage as part of the struggle against the cultural dimensions of the genocide. We've been thinking and discussing with our local partners in Lebanon and Palestine about how and when and why and where to augment the documentary heritage or perhaps replace what has been lost through oral history, which is certainly something that people have been doing for a very long time. Our thinking about oral history is very much tied to our determination to document every aspect of the Zionist crimes as part of our efforts to contribute and feed into memorialization efforts, war crime persecution efforts, and the work to liberate ourselves and heal. As part of that, coming together with people like Tam and Dr. Mariam Karim, who will be speaking shortly, we are well aware that oral history is certainly or a method that emerges from the Western Academy or even diaspora scholars from any part of the world. Oral history has its roots and is grounded in cultures around the world, and it comes with all of its different methods and approaches and techniques and understandings, and not least in the Arab-speaking world or the Arab region, not least in places like Palestine and Lebanon, where for a very long time, different methods and practice of oral history, really centuries and millennia. Not least, as I've learned, particularly from our speakers today and Dr. Mariam Karim, not least as part of Arab womanist, Arab feminist practices within the anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist arena in this part of the world in the last century. Its roots go very deep. And we want to learn from that. We want to have our work in line with that. And we also want to share that with the world, a world that too often continues to forget that we Arab feminists exist and have existed in one way or another, under one term or another, since as long as such a thing has existed anywhere. And so as part of that, certainly it's a great honor of mine and joy and something I've wanted for a long time, which is to profile the work of Dr. Faiha Abdulhadi and Dr. Manal Hamzeh, to learn from them, to stage this conversation as part of what I hope to be many more conversations between all of us and knowledge sharing and learning about what it means to do oral history from an Arab feminist, Arab Nasawiya tradition, and how to elaborate, build it into these difficult and dark times with their particularities and both their continuities and their distinctive specific aspects. And as part of that, I'd like to ask you all, anyone who's listening, who's able to donate to the Fighting Erasure Project, which funds this series, as well as a lot of the work that the Fighting Erasure Project does more broadly, because generally we have no funding, and quite often for the kinds of things we do, no one wants to fund us, and we also perhaps don't want to be beholden to anybody around the more political aspects of our work. So if you're able to, even if it's just a small amount, which can mean quite a lot more to us even, then to know that support is there. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome my longtime and dear comrade, Dr. Mariam Karim. We come up together from some pretty hardcore, difficult, often violent anti-Zionist organizing for well over a decade, not least as graduate students at the University of Toronto, where we first met Dr. Manal Hamzeh when we did a panel together, right? I don't know if Dr. Manal remembers, but also I will never forget all the marshalling we did, me and Mariam, getting spat at and pushed and assaulted by the Jewish Defense League at the University of Toronto. And when you come out through that kind of work with someone, and we had a habit at the University of Toronto, if you don't mind, maybe I'm going on too long. I never meant to say all this. We had a habit of putting the women and the Latino people as the frontline marshals. But maybe that's a conversation for another day. So without further ado, over to you, Mariam.
Thank you, Dr. Jamila and Tam. And, it's been so humbling and important, the Archives and Heritage for Palestine seminar series. And very honored and humbled today to introduce Dr. Faiha Abdulhadi and Dr. Manal Hamzeh, whose work, of course, not only have I learned so much from, but their work have opened up the way, giving us the language, the tools, the strategies on how to pursue Arab feminist liberatory work in all its forms. So I will introduce Dr. Faiha and Dr. Manal, offering a little bit from their very long life work, and then we will start with the speakers. They will begin their presentations. So Dr. Faiha Abdulhadi is a writer, poet, research consultant, community activist, and lecturer, in addition to a long life experience in various aspects of research, oral history, gender, and other issues of human interest. She's the founder and the Director General of Al-Ruwat for Studies and Research, and Al-Ruwat is the Arabic word for narrators. And you can find out more in the website, which should be in the chat. And Al-Ruwat seeks to accomplish a major goal, that is the rewriting of social history by focusing on the stories of marginalized groups and documenting stories of people who witnessed relevant historical events. Dr. Faiha is a member of the Palestinian National Council and the Palestinian Central Council. She's the chairwoman of the Board of Trustees of the Palestinian Center for Policy Research and Strategic Studies, Masarat. She has published 15 books in addition to various studies and articles in literature, poetry, oral history, women's studies, and politics. A few of her books include The Political Role of Palestinian Women in the 1930s, The Role of Palestinian Women in the 1940s, The Role of Palestinian Women in the 1950s until the 1960s, and The Role of Palestinian Women from the mid-1960s until 1982, in addition to a bibliography of Palestinian oral history, and a book, Living Memories, Testimonies of Palestinians Displaced in 1948. And I'm not including here, of course, your poetry books and other literary works as well. And Allow me to introduce Dr. Manal Hamzeh, who's a full professor and co-founder of the Department of Borderlands and Ethnic Studies. The acronym is BEST, which you'll also learn more about in the chat, in the biography, which will be shared at New Mexico State University, where she is also the director of the research center, the founder of the decolonial research minor, which started in 2024, as well as the lead faculty teaching 2 Palestine studies courses at New Mexico State. She's the sole author of Women Resisting Sexual Violence and the Egyptian Revolution, Arab Feminist Testimonies, and the co-researcher, co-editor, and co-producer of 3 Women of Tahrir, Stories from the Egyptian Revolution, a documentary non-fiction graphic book, which was released in 2020. She's the researcher and scholar of Shahadat, a play script authored by Fuad Taimur in 2024, and the sole author of Pedagogies of Devealing Muslim Girls and the Hijab Discourse, and the co-author of The Four Hijab, an animation film. She's also the author and co-author of over 30 peer-reviewed articles and book chapters in journals like International Journal of Qualitative Studies in Education, Ethnic Studies Pedagogies, Journal of Anthropology of the Middle East, Cairo Papers in Social Science, Journal Women's International Forum, and the Journal of Chicana Latina Studies, MALCS, and the Journal of Curriculum Inquiry. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really looking forward to, of course, hearing and learning from you, and very thankful for your time and this opportunity to connect. So we will begin with Dr. Faiha. Dr. Faiha.
Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to be with you today. Many thanks to the organizers. Many thanks to the participants. I look forward to a fruitful discussion today. I'll wait for the presentation, so I'll not take much of your time. My presentation today is on oral history as decolonial praxis, women voices challenging the dominant Zionist narrative. I would like to start with a poem for Mahmoud Darwish. Maybe I will close also with a poem. Mahmoud Darwish said, "Whoever writes his story will inherit the land of words and possess meaning entirely." Why it's so important to build Palestinian archives? We will never forget that thousands of Palestinian archives were looted 1948 and 1967. We will never forget that the Palestinian Research Center in Beirut was targeted by Israeli soldiers in 2 car bombings, July and August 1982, where 20,000 books were looted. The Israeli army did not satisfy by that. They destroyed the building, the whole building, in 1983. Now we are all watching the genocide on Gaza since 2023, where the Israeli army burned, destroyed, and executed hundreds of thousands of historical documents, treasured books, photos, land property, manuscripts, and archives from libraries, research centers, and universities. It was and still a systematic targeting. They targeted Gaza Municipality Central Archives, Gaza City's main public library, archaeological headquarters, central public libraries, Omari Mosque, where there are libraries, museum, valuable artifacts from Islamic eras, Diana Tamari Sabbagh Library, and private libraries. So it is very important to write history, and not only to write history, to rewrite history, adopting oral history methodology. We are the living archives that do not die. We are the audiovisual archives that walk on 2 legs, see with 2 eyes, and hear with 2 ears. We are the archives of the people, what they experience daily. We are the social history. We make history, and thus we need to write history. Why we need to rewrite history from women's perspective? Because it uncovers the roles of women in making history. It gives voice to the voiceless. It makes women visible and their voices heard through recording their shahadat, testimonies. Challenges patriarchal system and stereotypes. We adopted the feminist practice of oral history, which enable us. There will be a partnership where there will be a partnership between the narrator and the researcher. We take care of a very important elements: participation, patience, observation, listening, and body language. Here we can see the picture for Nida Abu Taha, a Ruwat field researcher from Nablus, and she's documenting the shahadi of Sabha Amr from Rabbaniya village, which was destroyed in 1948 and demolished totally and ethnic cleansed. Arabyya, it's in the south of Haifa, and she's living now. She was displaced to Al Far'a refugee camp near Nablus. Here you can see the picture of Suhaila Taha from Jerusalem and documented her shahada in Jerusalem. Also Mariam Shakhshir in Nablus. Abla Abu Taha, who's from Qalqilya, but we documented her shahada in Amman in the diaspora. Here you can see the elements, the body language very well. And what do you mean by body language? What do you mean by listening and participation? Feminist oral history methodology, along with intersectionality as an analytical framework, it enables us to understand the intersections between gender and power differentials based on age, class, disabilities, ethnicity, nationality, racialization, sexuality, violence, and other social divisions. It enables us to understand the power relation between women and men and amongst women themselves. Documenting women's hidden voices, it enables us to listen to the contradicting voices of women, the voice that they express and the one that they suppress. It enables us to read the hidden voice, comparing the two to have an in-depth understanding of the thoughts of women, to uncover the language and the meaning that women utilize in their daily lives, to help us become aware of the social forces and ideas that have impact on them. How did we use oral narratives? We used it in writing history, in literature, and arts. In writing history, I'll talk in brief about the books mentioned by Jamila, that it was published out of a research on the political roles of Palestinian women since the 30s, which we conducted and we started 1998. The first book is The Political Roles of Palestinian Women in the 30s, which was published in Arabic 2006, and in English it was translated to English 2015. Also, The Political Roles of the Palestinian Women in the 40s, which was published also in 2006. The third book, The Political Roles of Palestinian Women 1950s until 1965. The fourth, entitled The Political Roles of Palestinian Women 1965 until 1982. So the research explored the missing areas not covered by written history. It confirmed some of the facts written in history, corrected some facts that researchers consider as given, and added some facts to written history. It explored the role of the Daisy Flower Society. It recorded the social changes during the period. We noted the Palestinian women's significant involvement in politics and diversity of their roles. Also, women became stronger, braver, able to challenge, confront, and rebel against the social restrictions that limited their ability to contribute politically. By Arwat for Studies and Research Center, and along with the Arwat team, and of the several projects that we are conducting now, I will focus on two projects Palestinian displacement in 1948, and Palestinian displacement from Gaza since October 2023. Two books were published during conducting the research on the displacement of Palestinians in 1948. Here, the first book, Living Memories, it contains 6 testimonies for 6 narrators, 3 men and 3 women. And Mirrors of Memory, it contains the photos and the belongings of the displaced Palestinians from Palestine in 1948 that we collected, of course. Women Voices. Women Voices enrich the Palestinian narrative, challenge the dominant Zionist narrative. I will start with the first project, the Palestinian displacement in 1948. What happened? How it happened? By answering these 2 questions, women challenged and deconstruct the Zionist narrative. What happened was ethnic cleansing par excellence. Systematic forced displacement of entire Palestinian families through various means. Killing of civilians and massacres. Indirect killing through spreading terror, fear, and panic among Palestinians caused by plane bombings, shelling, explosive barrels, and tanks. Displaced women use different terms to describe their displacement, such as expulsion, transfer, displacement, forced displacement, elevation, all of which help enrich the Palestinian discourse and narrative, which is counter-narrative to the fake Zionist story. Khadija Khalil Abu Isba from Salame, Yafa. She said, "We did not immigrate, we were elevated." What an inspiring expression that Khadija used, elevation. This is the first time we heard about this expression. We lived temporarily until we were able to return. The Jews besieged the town from all 4 sides. Where would the people live? They kept an opening as if to say, "Come on, leave. We have opened the road for you to leave through the valley that separates our town from Yazur." Salama from Yazur. Rashid Abdallah, when we read Rashid Abdallah from Iraq al-Manshiyya, a district of a village of district of Gaza, it showed women as partners of women in resisting the aggression. She said they were resisting, men and women alike. Yet, Rabah would sit amidst the sacks on the roof of the house. She would sit and watch where the shooting was coming from. When she saw her husband feeling tired, she would tell him, "Go down and I will go up to replace you." They would exchange roles. Here you can see her picture before displacement and after displacement. The second project is documenting shahadat of displaced women from the Gaza Strip since 2023. We started the project 2024. Documenting shahadat of displaced women from Gaza challenges the dominant Zionist narrative. It shows clearly gendered colonialism or coloniality of gender, militarization of women's bodies, femi-genocide, and reproductive violence, according to a number of feminist scholars and human rights defenders. Here you can see Mariam Karim from Jabalia, her picture here, and her children picture, whom she lost along with her husband in Jabalia in the beginning of the genocide in 2023. She said, "I was about to lose my mind. I could not believe the disappearance of my husband and 4 children. My body was full of major burns after a missile destroyed our home, throwing me from the 2nd floor to the street, killing my husband and 4 children. I was informed of this tragedy after 10 days spent in the Gaza European Hospital. I had severe pains from the burns and event injuries. I spent 3 months in the hospital before I was able to get the approval to receive treatment in Egypt." The second testimony, the second shahadi for Bayan Abu Nahle from Gaza. She's a fine artist. You can see her picture here, and you can see 2 of her paintings. She said, I will never forget my friend, the artist Halim Al-Kahlout, who was killed by missiles from a helicopter with 10 of her family in Gaza on the 30th of October 2023. Earlier, on the 13th of October, the artist teacher Hiba Zakut was also killed with her 2 children by an Israeli bomb targeting her home in Gaza. I could not find a better way to face these dark days than to resort to my watercolors, my notebooks, ink and pens that accompanied me in my deportation journey. Painting was my favorite means to detach me from place and time. The third shahadi is for Islam and Hiba Dheer from Rafah. Here you can see their picture and their 4 children. Here you can see their 4 children whom they lost and they were killed and executed in Rafah. As they narrated their story, they only smiled when their kids were mentioned. Ayman, kind-hearted, compassionate, ambitious, a comedian that wishes to an airplane pilot. Iman, strong personality, responsible, popular, and wishes to become a doctor. Aus, strong like chicks, pagans. He used to raise a chicken that searched for him after he was killed. Thanks God, Islam said, I was able to build a tomb for them with a special crafted tombstone taken from a piece of marble found from the rubble of our demolished home. We can see the previous picture, please. Here is the tombstone, this one. And here the names, where he wrote the names of his son and daughters and his it's okay. Yes, we move on. Yeah. Through Palestinian narratives, photographs, and belongings, the people of Palestine rise up to be seen, a people with a violated land, and a history that needs to be recorded, and a life worthy of regaining. أقص حكاياتي، ألوي عنق الزمن، أعصر ماضية، أكون. I narrate my tales. I twist the necks of time. I extract my past. I exist. I enter into history, beautiful and radiant. I spread my robe. The springs erupt. The cataracts fall. نريمان الأقحوان مهيبة. روبين الهودج الشطرنج الموالي الدبكة تبان. أيوب العجمي النبي صالح. سلمة أجنادين الفحام. Strings of words extend into time. Walled in by orange trees, the quinin, the quins, words that climb and travel, Amman, Damascus and Lebanon, khaki uniforms, waterfalls and cedar trees, البقعة اليرموك and Tell الزعتر. I, in spirit, the letters large. I shape my world. I make my history. I exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Faiha, for your presentation and for sharing the shahadat and your beautiful poem. I'd like to introduce now Dr. Manal Hamzeh to join the screen, and I will share the slides.
Or go to the first slide.
Sorry, yes.
Oh. It's very hard to go after this, Dr. Faiha. Thank you for all you've taught us and you've given us throughout your career. And thank you for the organizers, my colleagues, who had worked very hard to keep this series alive and bring in voices that assert our presence and existence through this genocide on Palestinians in Gaza. Let me begin by a welcome in Arabic, Ahlan wa sahlan. And I welcome you, that means, into this space, in this informal conversation for me, as I would greet you to my home as a guest and invite you to be kin and open a vast space of knowing and knowledge, and hope that the conversations between us, the haki, is easy on our hearts. In the following few minutes, I'm hoping that we will begin to think together of shahadat, testimonies, and haki, the informal conversations, as Arabyya, research methodologies, and how they can and do refuse Western colonial parameters of knowledge production, and how they may speak to liberatory archive studies. So I will first start with my trajectory of how I came to and how I worked with shahadat and haki. This came through an enormous event in the Arab world, the January 2011 Egyptian revolution. And in 2011, to me, working with women who had defied the militarist, colonialist powers that wanted to counter the revolution and used sexual gender violence against people who were revolting against the tyranny that they have lived for decades. The shahadat that revealed themselves to me, they were on the ground in Egypt, online, in video and text. And I couldn't stop looking and listening to them as I was bringing myself, quote unquote, as a researcher to understand how that is a methodology of resistance and defiance from the women in Egypt. So I witnessed them revealing the violence of the regime and fighting at the same time to create knowledge so that they can get even more powerful on the ground and in their knowing and making meaning of their lived experience and embodied experiences. This was an enormous event that took me for over 10 years now to assert shahadat as an Arabyya methodology within the academy in North America. So I want to also uplift what Jamila started with, that we have been doing this work on the ground as Arab women, Arab feminists, all along since colonization came to us over 100 years ago. The second massive event is, of course, is the Israeli genocide of the Palestinians over the past 22 months in Gaza. We're all witnessing live online the insistence of the Palestinians in Gaza with their shahadat countering the intentional blackout truth killing of all kinds of crimes. This is to say, shahadat is an intuitive, spontaneous, on the ground, and intentional anti-colonial, anti-oppression methodology and method of revealing knowledge and layers of meaning. It is a public act of exposing settler colonial systemic murderous logics and practices. So in this second enormous event, more shahadats are coming from the Palestiniyat. And I've been working with a specific one Palestinian artist, Shahad Rajab, who comes from Shuja'iyya in the city of Gaza, and now have been displaced over 22 times. And at this moment, she's living in Hay al-Nasr in the west of Gaza city. Rajab has been working with me through her art to teach Palestine and to help us to learn Palestine. So just to get us going in the sense of what shahadat mean to the work I do as an academic, I asked Shahad to write me in her own words what the displacements that she went through mean to her. As I have been working through the material she gave me through her haki, the informal conversations we've been having on WhatsApp for over now 14 months. So in the next slide, I will share with you, as you see now on the screen, her Arabic shahada about displacement. And I'm hoping the organizers will put the translation in the chat for everybody to get it. I will not read those words. I have asked Shahad to record me a voice message so that her voice comes out to you. This is an approach I have that allows the shahadat to be the voice of those women who express their lived experiences through any enormous event of colonization and settler colonialism, and in this case, genocide. So I'll give you like a minute to read it in Arabic on the screen and read it in the chat as the translation comes up in a minute. Thank you. Next. Even though it's hard to move on, but sitting with that, I've been sitting with it for over 48 hours, like we sit with every shahada that comes out on any device we're using and any platform. We source the knowledge coming out of Gaza at this, during this genocide. As I realized this is a short time of an encounter with you all, I want to briefly just present to you what shahadat means as a methodology and method, which is different than the method of interviewing or even the methodology of history, or even though they overlap, and narrations. It has to be, in the form I see it, a public account of injustice and intentionality that is political. And it has to be presented on some sort of a public forum, whether it's online or on stage or in a group of people listening to each other. And to assert the meaning of it in Arabic, I want to say that the masculine noun, I use the word shahidat for those women who present their shahada, and the masculine noun in the Arabic dictionary, shahid, is defined as the knower, the revealer. Al-ashhad are the prophets, messengers, angels who testify about the deceivers and the liars. Despite the absence of the feminine form of this noun in major Arabic dictionary, I use the singular noun shahida, the one, for the one who gives testimony or she who bears witness. Additionally, shahada is a public practice that intends to reveal oppression. That's in my book. of 2020, where I began to quote unquote theorize what that means in Arabic, what shahadat means in Arabic, even though they've existed for decades as practices on the ground, encountering and countering and colonialism in the region. And the root of testimonials, no, you can, yeah, is to the Chicanas and Latinas in the U.S. Academy comes from Latin America or South America, where indigenous women were testifying against the genocide, for example, in Guatemala. And then they took it and legitimized it, so to speak, as a methodology in academic work, more or less in the 90s and on. So I've been working with some of the colleagues here, my Chicana colleagues here at NMSU, since 2016, bridging those methodologies together, but giving them their distinction as they come from different contexts also. Okay, next. And then the other methodology and method is haki, and it is basically informal conversations that are intimate and built on trust. And I've borrowed this more or less from the work of Dr. Faiha Abdulhadi, as she works with also hikayat, which is also coming from the root verb of haka, which is weaving. And that, to me, it is weaving the knowledge and the meanings and the memories of people throughout when they are interacting in intimate and informal ways. And then they are they form at the end, they are rooted in indigenous Palestinian epistemologies and memories and relation to the land and place and the body. And then haki and hikayat are also tools for sumud. And many of you know what that is, even if you don't speak Arabic. It's that steadfastness and the resistance that Palestinians deliberately use to keep themselves and their memories dignified as they speak back to the Zionist narrative. And sumud is also a mode of anti-colonial becoming that's constantly engaged a process of the subjugation, I think, and the act of remaining in place in the face of indignities, injustice, and humiliation at the hands of the colonial power. And this is so testimonials or shahadat and haki go hand in hand with sumud in our reality now with the genocide. And then lastly, I want to say that the methodology of shahadat and haki, they are intertwined. They go through a spiral process. And then in the latest work that I published finally this year is showing how haki brings out fadfada in Arabic, which is the revealing, the divulsion of what's in the heart to lighten it through art, and then bringing in more shahadat. And that is, those images are from the graphic documentary that I've worked on with 5 artists in Egypt to uplift the shahadat of 3 Egyptian women in the revolution in this graphic form to make it more accessible. And the image on the left is Shahad Rajab's image expressing scholasticide in Gaza. She's a second-year university student whose university was totally demolished at the beginning of the genocide in 2023. And it is a way for her to also give her shahada in art and to amplify the truths that people live as individuals and as collectives. Okay, and I want to close with the last slide by the methodologies that we're presenting today. Dr. Faiha and I are, beside their Arabyya resistance, knowledge co-creation and methodologies. The question is, how do they contribute to the archive studies for Palestine, and how they are already part of people's archives of lived experiences that, as Dr. Faiha said, they are living walking on two legs with two eyes and a mind, of course. How many do they? How may they contribute to the imagination of liberatory living and being outside colonial logics and practices? So I'm leaving us with some questions, and I have so many questions in my head coming out from preparing this presentation and this meeting that I want to keep addressing and thinking of with you all. Thank you. Shukran.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. It was so powerful. You could feel so many people and work and decades of struggle you brought into the space here with us, and a very rich tradition, far more than perhaps we can realize, even from just this discussion. We have so much to draw on, so much incredible work to draw on. And it's almost a kind of joy against the genocide, and also a sense of the giants whose shoulders we stand on, a sense of less aloneness, which is always a feature of violence, that isolation. Thank you so much. I have also many questions, and we will do what we can with the time we have today, and also make sure that this is just the beginning of conversations. But I heard very strongly all the ways in which this counters Zionist erasure, Zionism itself, that almost goes without saying. And what I'd like to do is hand it back to Dr. Mariam Karim, who's spent a lot of time with work and has pulled in a few quotations for us, help us kind of work through all this rich knowledge. Of course, Tam, at any point, as always, if you'd like to jump in. We were all a bit floored, so I think we're catching our breath.
No?
Is it? Yeah, I can say a few words. I'm still sitting with everything that was said, the deep, rich knowledge that was shared, the voices that were uplifted. And one of the things that I'm reflecting on is one of the things that Dr. Faiha, you said at the very start about this sort of feminist approach to oral history as a methodology is one that's fully embodied. And here I am reflecting on how us, as we've been listening to you, have been so deeply embodied in our listening, and we feel it, and we're all, we have a chat that we use to talk as the organizers, and all of us were fully taken physically by everything that you were saying. So that's one thing that I'm sitting with right now, I guess, and thinking about the power of this methodology, as this is something that you can't always get from the archive that you think of as one that's behind walls, that's in textual documents, that's far removed from the people. And I think that's part of the power of Shahadat as well, because it's a collective process. It's a collective practice that we do with each other. So I think if I could add anything at this point, it's just that I'm sitting with the power of that and how it's something that brings people together. It's more than just one, and that's the strength of it. But I'll pass it to you, Dr. Mariam, to start the discussion.
Maybe I could say one tiny more thing, just as you were talking, Tam, which is this refusal of data extractivism, if I could sound a little academic, which actually takes us well beyond oral history, which itself can be a very extractive a very, very extractive method, how it can be employed. And part of why I'm saying that is we at the series and at the Fighting Erasure Project absolutely refuse the idea that records or archives or heritage can or should be extracted or controlled or owned or displaced by anyone, even those who care for it, even those who provide the resources for it. What does it mean to think about haki and shahadat in terms of archives, actually, is a question now on my mind. Okay, please go ahead, Mariam.
Thank you so much. يعطيكم العافية, all of you. Dr. Faiha and Dr. Manal, we heard today testimonies, shahadat of Shahad Raja, Bayan Abu Bahle, Islam and Hibad Her, Mariam Karim, and others. And Dr. Faiha, your poem was so moving and so powerful, and we all learned so much from it. And indeed, through your work of recounting the shahadat of these women in Gaza who experienced genocide, who are at the front lines of the struggle, as you write, as you do in your own work, which is you enter history into history beautiful and radiant, and so you have absolutely included those shahadat into history beautiful and radiant. And of course, both of you have done this across much of your work, and I like to say across, of course, 2 centuries. And we have with the many books you have listed, Dr. Faiha, the Palestinian women's struggle across the 20th century, and Dr. Manal, of course, not only in the 20th century, of course, beyond that, but also we have in terms of the Arab revolutions and its role within not only Arab struggle, but also the Palestinian struggle, and of course, that tells a larger story of Palestinian Arab feminist resistance. I want to start, if I may, Dr. Faiha, in your article, The Production of Alternative Knowledge, Political Participation of Palestinian Women Since the 1930s, and this is the case study, an article that mentions the book that you have shared in your presentation, which is both available in English and in Arabic, so people should check it out, or you can request your library to purchase the book if you can't find it in your library. The paper reflects on documenting the role of Palestinian women since the 1930s. You go over different time periods, and it includes, I believe, 155 narrators. And you mention in it, of course, that this work fills in the gap in our history of Palestinian women's narratives across the century, and that oral history offers deeper historical knowledge and narratives, especially also about rural women's participation in the Palestinian struggle during this period. And I quote, and you write, "The aim is to make women visible and to shed light on the history of women's struggle for the benefit of future generations of Palestinian and Arab young men and women, and to enable women to actively participate in rebuilding the Palestinian archives and reproduce knowledge." Can you please speak more about what is needed today from your experience in widening the scope and dimensions of a feminist approach to Palestinian and Arab oral history and archives, and the relationship, of course, with them? I think, Dr. Jamila, you mentioned this as a weapon against Zionist erasure. And you can address this however you like. Sorry, I took long.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a very good question. Actually, in order to expand the field of work through feminist oral history and use archives as a more effective weapon against the Zionist attempt to erase the Palestinian people, we need the following. We need to produce more high quality audio and visual archives about the Palestinian historical narrative, which deconstructs the Zionist narrative. Also, we need to organize seminars, discussions, workshops, panels, of course, in multiple languages about the Palestinian historical narrative. It's very important. What are you doing is very important, and we need to widen it to make more of different kind of panels. to organize, also to document our archives scientifically and methodically. It's very important, because if it was not documented well, if the audio is, if you can't hear well the audio, or if it's recorded by video and you can't watch it well with a low resolution, no benefit will get from this. So it's very important to document it scientifically and methodically. To search for, also very important, to search for archives and artifacts related to Palestine whenever they may be found, whether in Palestine, in different countries of the world, also even in Israeli institutions, because many of our archives are there. So it's very important to find them, search for them and find them. To establish a multilingual digital database. Also to create networking, more of the networking that is now going on, and collaboration between feminist institutions and individuals working on the field of archives around the world. Dr. Manal said something about that, which is very important. To make our archives fully or partially accessible to various fields of knowledge, in order to produce knowledge, alternative knowledge, materials that reinforce the Palestinian narrative in history, literature, and arts, in novels, in short stories, in theater, in storytelling, in documentaries, in exhibitions, in feature films, in animation, radio and television series, podcasts, fine arts, music, and singing. Every field of knowledge. So this will spread and widen the scope and insert the Palestinian narrative that is, encounter with the Zionist narrative.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Faiha. And this reminds me, Dr. Manal, in your work, your emphasis on multimedia approaches, but also narrating and expressing the shahadat through different forms, whether it's animation, film, books, animated books, and of course, scholarly and teaching and so on. So if I may, I want to touch upon your recent article, Graphic Representations of Women in the Egyptian Revolution and Arabyya Research Art Project with Feminists in Cairo, that you also mentioned in your presentation, and specifically the methodology of research, art research, which is a research approach commitment to revealing or co-creating knowledge of the people's experience within the colonial matrix of power. So as part of this methodology, the significance of multimedia, and maybe from your experience, what are the differences in dealing or trying to tell the stories through different, I keep saying the word different, but in a multimedia way. And we can maybe start here. And then I have...
Thank you for this question. I think the rigorous and vigorous work of coming close to the shahadat, as you hear them, not extract them and impose yourself on people with questions so that they pull out a shahada. To me, it is sitting with those shahadat to figure out their meaning with the shahidat as we decide and to think together. Are there other platforms? Do we have other media, access to other media that we can express those shahadat on? And art was the quote unquote natural answer, because many of those shahidat were artists in Egypt and decided, let's go for the graphic representation. So I say there's no prescription to what comes after the academic kind of archiving and theorizing the shahadat. It is something that dynamically, intuitively comes within the collective that I've been working with. But I want to emphasize about visual art in all its forms, that it is very, very powerful and very accessible, and it can reach a wide audience. So I am geared in the work that I do right now in researching meaning, thinking with the material that we have to co-create art, and then again look at the art itself and make more meaning out of it, so that we can continue to not only build up our knowledge, but also use it to do the resistance practices everywhere.
Thank you. And this is also, I think, one thing that I want to mention that I think is so profound in both of your work and so important, is that it adds to a layer of history that has not been, that is new, that has not been recorded before. And that
Yeah.
it's not that women's stories are about like women's history specifically, but it's adding new dimensions to history as we know it, and also historical events as they develop. We learn more about what happened. And Dr. If I want to mention one thing also about the article, is you mentioned, you let the narrator start, and Dr. Manal, you also have that in your methodology, to see what they remember first, and also the knowledge sharing between yourself and the narrator, and the new information that comes out of that discussion as building Palestinian memory. If you don't mind speaking more about this process, and also for those in the audience that maybe are interested in pursuing oral history work, what are some of these tenets that they must really understand to do it well?
You're addressing this to me.
اتفضلي بعدين أنا.
Okay. It's very important that when addressing the narrator, when you want to document the shahadi, using the shahadi, which is very important. When you document with the woman, it's in order to let her open up. You don't need to tell her something that it is like a statement, like if I want to ask her about her involvement in politics, let's say, you can tell her, did you participate in politics? This is a statement that when you ask this question, it happened with us when we started our projects. When the researcher asked the narrator, did you participate in politics? Immediately, the narrator said, no politics. Because also in her mind, in women's mind, politics is, they have the bad side of the politics, of course. It's connected with bad behavior of politicians. It's connected also with being involved in parties. She doesn't want to be a member of a party. It's her choice, of course. So, of course, if I want to go and ask, the academic question, did you participate? No, I did not. Khalas, I'll search for another woman who will participated. But we did not do that. Depending on the feminist practice of oral history, we asked the women whom we know that they participated in politics. Okay, if they said we did not, we say damn with politics. Just tell us about your childhood, about what did you do all through your whole life. Just tell us start from the angle and from the point that you want to start from. Start from wherever you want, and this let her feel free. And also this kind of listening carefully, participation, listening carefully, this will make the narrator just open up and be relaxed. And when we documented, let's say an example, a very clear example, when we documented the political role of Palestinian women in the 1936 revolt, when we asked the women and they start talking, we discovered that there is an important role, an active role they played in 1936 revolt, but they don't name it. They don't name that. They don't say that it is politics, because politics is within their lives. They are living politics, and this is not politics for them. So it is very important for us, depending on also the feminist practice of oral history, is to revise our terms that we use. is to redefine our terms that we use. That's very important.
Thank you. And, one of the Zionist strategies, the colonial strategies, is to try to make the separation between what is considered formally as politics and then also as women's issues, to trying to separate those two. When in fact, like you're mentioning, it is part of everyday life, experiencing the violence as part of everyday life. And that struggle includes all of that.
Yes. The private and the general are very much connected. Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dr. Manal, would you like to speak more about your experience with the shahadat and kind of, or shahidat, or shahida, and, how to kind of start the oral history process or the conversation process?
I say the starting point for me is always hearing and witnessing the shahada itself coming out somewhere else, and I'm not kind of provoking it. So then it's the event itself, the context itself, that is a prompt for a relationship with the people, with the women who gave their shahadat. So I don't ask directly. I just engage with them in informal conversations about the context, about what they have said or test about the shahada, and then see where it's going to expand. If I bring one example of Yasmin al-Baramawi, who had been who experienced a gang rape for over an hour and a half in the Egyptian revolution by the thugs employed by the regime in Egypt at that time. She visited me here in New Mexico State University just to get to know each other, as I have been in the so-called project of their shahadat. And she said to me, you know what? I want my shahadat to come out with even more details than I have posted online. So let's sit together. I said to her, okay, so what about having a camera over you and a microphone? And tell me through that more about your shahada. And she told me all the details that she went through in those 90 minutes that I've put as they are in my 2020 book. So I come to this with a different approach than Faiha, and those two approaches also come together and overlap in many occasions, and it depends on the circumstances. So this is my approach. I want to also mention one thing about the erasures and of our knowledge in the Western Academy. We all go through, if we're working with people, what they call human subjects. We need to get ethical approvals of our work with people. And those boards in the universities police us, and they want to police the methodologies that we go through. They want to make sure that we're not harming the people we work with, and we need to take their consent on what they have been divulging on air all through, for example, in the genocide. And they want us to take permission from them when they have no idea about the history or the context of Palestine to even begin contact or conversation with our Palestinian colleagues. So I want to emphasize that that's part of the approach. That's the refusal. I'm not taking permission from anybody to have relationships and open conversations and understand the shahadat of those women under the genocide in Gaza.
I need to step in here. This is definitely a huge issue. Not least with students that I'm working with, or in general, this kind of infantilizing of oppressed communities and people that we want to work with. It's disgusting. The concept of human subjects, the term is disgusting. It's disgusting that they have ethics boards that are actually basically run by lawyers. There's nothing else going on but risk assessment, lawyers, and a whole bunch of business talk. I'm not saying anything that I haven't, I'm not willing, haven't, and I'm not willing to go on record. one of the other methods they're using is so-called risk assessment for students and for scholars traveling. So really, we're being policed by predominantly white ethics boards as racialized feminists, scholars, students. I had to get permission from the head of my department to travel to Lebanon to do my research, because the Dutch state is very worried about my safety since Lebanon is on a red zone. But above and beyond that, one method we used recently with a wonderful, brilliant student of mine, actually at Dalhousie University, Kelsey Morgan, was we did it by having a round table. We did it as a public event, bringing in Ghada Damashq, Rula Shahwan, who actually first introduced me to Dr. Faiha, and Basma Shibani.
Yes.
And Kelsey and I moderated it, and we insisted on them as co-creators, not subjects, but it was a way to get around the whole idea of being policed by the Dalhousie Ethics Board. And we've used other kinds of strategies. I am inspired by your outright refusal, which I will happily adopt, but might be a bit different sometimes for students.
Let me add to this, because they want to measure risk, as you say, and then it's like you said, why don't you stop financing the genocide, and then there will be no risk from the get-go.
Thank you. And who knows best? Us, who are in our community, who come from our community, who live there. I live in Lebanon most of the year. Who knows best?
Yeah.
So it's really that violence of being contained within the Western Academy, even though in theory you were brought in because this is your expertise, and that it kept completely erased. Another way that's done that is actually through privacy laws, which never keep us private from Zionist surveillance, state surveillance, but definitely. Okay.
The one thing that I'll add, this is a great conversation, and I'm living through it right now because I also had to get permission to come here to Palestine because I'm also doing research right now throughout the summer, and at the start of my time here back in June when there was the aggression on Iran. The insurance company reached out to me to ask if I was willing to evacuate. And I said, which is hilarious, that's another story. And I said, no, I'm here with my family. I'm fine. And they're like, well, if you choose not to evacuate now, that's your choice, and we will not evacuate you in the future. It's one and done. Make your choice now. Which says a lot about what they think about risk, where it's and what they think about consent as well. Because if they don't consider consent to be an ongoing conversation, we reached out to you once and you said no. So if you are bombed, then that was your choice. And that's also how they treat Palestinians here as well, right? But what I find very interesting, and I've been thinking and taking notes as you both have been talking about your practice when it comes to art research, Dr. Manal and Dr. Faiha, how you're talking about haki and oral history as a partnership between researcher and narrator. And I'm thinking through the decolonial aspects of these methodologies. And some of the things that I've been bringing out is, on one hand, it's iterative. So it happens in a long process of trust building. And then, as you said, Dr. Manal, about shahada, it's spontaneous. It'll happen when it happens in relation to the need to testify to some injustice that is happening, a violence that is happening, like it's something that rises up of its own accord. And then also the open-endedness, where you're not the one coming in with an agenda to extract information. You're coming in, letting the participant drive the conversation, how they need it to go based on what they are testifying to in their own lived experience. And this refusal, as we've been talking about. And I find this amazing to think through, frankly, because, we're taught in Western academia, we're taught all these extractive methods of going in and doing oral history. As you all know, you go in with a recorder and you say exactly how long the interview will be. If it's, they have to sign a consent form sometimes, or like you read them an informed consent form, how the data is used, what data can be used in certain ways, and all these things, this control, and what you're both doing in pushing forward and offering us another way, an alternative paradigm of doing oral history is one that is frankly decolonial in exactly the entire way that it's conceptualized. So I have no question. I'm just drawing the threads together, weaving the threads together, and I think there's a lot that can be offered, not just in Western approaches to doing oral history, but also how we think about the archive and how we think about archive as information, and what is knowledge and what types of knowledge are produced in the archive and how they get to be in the archive.
I think also the greatest violence of these ethics boards and these alleged practices of ethics like consent forms and so on is that you tick all these boxes and you're not producing ethical research or knowledge whatsoever. In fact, you can be producing Zionist, fascist, horrible, colonialist, racist knowledge, but you got ethics approval.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Tam, on the decolonial part, or the decolonial praxis that we're doing through those Arabyya methodologies, there are many components that I always say it's part of the attempt of doing decolonial praxis, because it's not a destination that we're getting to in the decolonial work, but it is a trajectory and a practice that goes back and forth between knowing, theorizing, and practicing with people, not on our own as academics. And there are several parameters to that, and I would emphasize the research relationships, how they have to be reciprocal, critically reflexive. And I'm not using those words just as words. I try my best to articulate their shapes and contours in every part of the process that I'm going through, to keep myself in check as I'm trying. Because if we do attempt the decolonial praxis, we might begin to see and imagine the liberatory ways of living and being.
Yeah. Right.
So with that, we come to the end of our discussion. So we'll just be wrapping up. Each of us will take a turn, as we do usually for these seminar series, to say a few words, a few final thoughts, things that we want to leave each other with, or the audience, or want to think through. So I'll start, and I'll just say that I think that there's a lot that archives want to be drawing from the field of collective memory, oral history, feminist praxis. And I think there's a lot here that can be applied, not just in widening the scope of what comes into the archive, but also thinking about our understanding of what is knowledge and what knowledge looks like, and the form of what a record could be, and who is the ones who are producing knowledge. One of the things that came up a lot in both your presentations was this idea of the women's voices needing to be recorded or uplifted even if it's not recorded. And what does that say about the written document? What does that say about whose voices enter the written document? Who is seen as an authority on history? So even if the archive, there's the idea of the living archive, which I love and I have drawn on in my own work. There's the idea of the archive that exists in the body. But also, I think, like, even if it is a tangible archive, it is a brick and mortar archive, it is a record that you hold in your hand, who is the authority in creating that record? How do we create liberatory and decolonial ideas of the authority on those records? That's a place, I think, that's an entry point into how we think about how archives could be taking these lessons from what we've been drawing on today. So I'll end there for my final thoughts, and I'll pass it to you, Dr. Mariam.
Thank you. It's been really an honor to have been part of this conversation. And of course, this work of recording through oral history or history writing Palestinian and Arab feminist stories has been going on for over 100 years. I mean, we have, for example, Mateen Moghannam's book, The Arab Woman and the Palestine Problem, which is written in English, published in 1937, has also included narrations of the Palestinian women's movement, but also the Palestinian nationalist struggle and movement. And we have, until today, the great knowledge of Dr. Faiha and Dr. Manal, who kind of have added to this very rich corpus of feminist history that I encourage the speakers, of course, if you haven't already, to read and to learn from, assign inside your classes. But of course, it's an alternative history, a history that is grounded in truth and feminist resistance, that completely debunks and resists the Zionist fake narrative. And of course, they will continue to lose. The Zionist narrative will continue to lose, as we continue seeing today. And thank you so much.
Dr. Faiha, I wish I had time today to ask you about what it's like to be a poet and do this kind of work. To ask you about your time as a political prisoner at the age of 15 and the incredible experience of having been imprisoned with your mother. I wish I had time, Dr. Manal, to ask you about your work outside of our region and what that brings back to our region and how we're in conversation. I wish I had time to ask you about all the things that come with listening to women talk about that kind of brutal sexual violence. I could almost hear it in your tone, but I know there's a lot more. I want to share the thought that absolutely what is decolonial about this work, echoing a bit of what Mariam said earlier, is that it destabilizes, it counters the weaponization of gender as a tool of empire, to draw on Shireen Razak's work or wording. It destabilizes categories and the dominant historical, the dominant history, the dominant stories told about the past. But that perhaps the most decolonial aspect of it all is the shahada, the actual knowledge, the actual content of these women's experiences. It's what our future are made possible by. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Manal, and perhaps we can end with you, Dr. Faiha.
There's so much that I'm taking with me. I want to say my heart is full because I'm amongst all of you, thinking together and questioning to move forward as a collective to counter the colonial violence around us. You are leaving me with so many questions, so many a lot of energy to even work harder so that this kind of work is taught in classrooms everywhere, including our universities, starting from Palestine. And this is something that I'm wishing for, and I'm trying to imagine so it does happen, that doing teaching research doesn't happen the Western modern scientific way. So you're like giving me more energy to look for those ways inside Palestine of how to expand the Arabyya methodologies and knowledge co-creation. So thank you very much.
Many points that I want to clear or focus on and clarify, but I think that this discussion is very rich. And I think that it's very important to stress on the importance of gathering our efforts to create more networking, more collaboration between feminists, between archivists, between researchers, and we need to develop our methodologies. It's very important. We've been talking, me and Manal, several times about this, that we need to develop and we need to, to go further and add to the methodologies from Arabic point of view, how we can add to the knowledge and to the alternative knowledge and create and build alternative. Together we can do that. Together, it's very important. Solidarity, feminist solidarity, good, hardworking in these fields, and also to share our knowledge, to share and discuss. And still, some questions still be open, but for more discussions, later discussions. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Tam, Mariam, and Jamila. Thank you, Manal. Thank you, participants, all the participants, and looking forward to organize more debates, more series, more different kinds of gathering, women gathering, so we can get to to this developing knowledge and decolonial knowledge.